The galaxy was at war. For centuries, the Telnari Dominion had ruled with absolute dominance, their energy-based weaponry rendering all opposition helpless. No matter the species, no matter the strategy, when the Dominion fired, civilizations turned to dust. The coalition of free worlds had resisted, but barely. Every attempt at rebellion ended in swift annihilation. Their fleets were shattered. Their armies burned away before they could even reach the battlefield. Hope was a distant memory. Then, the humans arrived. They were a late addition to the interstellar scene, a species from a backwater planet called Earth. Compared to the Dominion, their technology was primitive. Their ships were slower, their weapons outdated. But desperation made for strange alliances, and the coalition, with nothing left to lose, extended an offer. Humanity accepted, eager to prove themselves in a war none expected them to survive. The first deployment was a massacre, just not the kind the Dominion had expected. Captain Elias Rourke led a battalion of human soldiers onto the surface of Vorton 6, a battlefield littered with the charred remains of alien corpses. The Dominion's forces arrived in their usual fashion. Waves of sleek war machines, plasma cannons ready to turn the newcomers into ash. The first shots were fired. Blinding lances of violet energy tore through the air, striking human bodies dead center. The coalition commanders watching from orbit braced for the inevitable screams, the disintegration. But the humans didn't die. Rourke stumbled as the bolt of energy struck his chest. He felt the impact, the searing pain, but he was still standing. Around him, his soldiers gasped, clutching their wounds, but they, too, were alive. The Dominion gunners hesitated, confused. This had never happened before. The second volley came, stronger, more concentrated. More humans fell, but again they did not die. Some rose back to their feet within seconds, their bodies shuddering, skin darkening in places where the shots had landed. By the third volley, something incredible happened. The humans weren't just surviving, they were enduring. Captain Rourke took another hit, this time without flinching. His muscles tightened, his body adjusting. He exhaled sharply, eyes widening as realization dawned. "It doesn't hurt as much," he muttered. He clenched his fist. "It's easier." The battlefield fell silent. The Dominion troops stopped firing. The coalition, watching from their command centers, stared in stunned disbelief. Something was wrong. Something impossible was happening. The humans had taken direct energy hits, the same weapons that had turned entire armies to vapor, and yet they remained, bruised, bloody, but standing. For the first time in its long, merciless reign, the Dominion hesitated. Then, the humans advanced. The medical bay was in chaos. Coalition scientists crowded around the injured human soldiers, scanning them, testing their physiology, searching for an answer. It defied every known law of biology. Energy weapons didn't leave survivors. Yet here they were, battered but very much alive. Some even seemed stronger than before. Dr. Yelvan, a Zalari biologist with centuries of experience, examined Captain Rourke under high-spectrum analysis. His readings made no sense. The cells around Rourke's wounds were shifting, restructuring themselves almost as if learning. It was subtle but unmistakable. The damaged tissue wasn't just healing, it was adapting. Further scans revealed something even more astonishing. Human cell structures showed an unprecedented level of plasticity, a biological flexibility never before seen in any species. Their bodies weren't resisting energy damage the way armor would resist a bullet. They were integrating it. Every exposure to directed plasma, thermal radiation, or ionized energy triggered a rapid response at the cellular level. Instead of breaking down, human cells absorbed and redistributed the energy, reconfiguring their molecular structure to withstand future hits. Yelvan's tendrils trembled as she reviewed the data. "They are evolving," she whispered. In real time, the implications were staggering. The Dominion's greatest weapon, energy-based warfare, was suddenly losing its edge. Humans weren't immune, not yet, but with enough exposure, they could become something terrifying. No other species had exhibited this kind of response. The reason, the scientists theorized, lay in Earth's evolutionary history. Humans had endured constant environmental extremes: deadly radiation, scorching heat, freezing cold. Their bodies had adapted to trauma, developing redundant biological systems to survive wounds that would kill most creatures. The radiation from ancient wars, the genetic hardening from exposure to ultraviolet rays, even their history of physical endurance, all had shaped them into the perfect candidates for resistance against energy-based attacks. The coalition leaders listened in disbelief as the research was presented. The ramifications were clear. If humanity could train itself to withstand plasma fire, then the Dominion's overwhelming tactical advantage would crumble. Rourke, now fully recovered, sat on the edge of the medical table, rolling his shoulder where the wound had been. "So what you're saying," he said slowly, "is that the more they shoot us, the less it works." The scientists exchanged glances. Finally, Yelvan nodded. "Yes, that appears to be the case." Rourke grinned. "Well then," he said, standing, "let's get shot some more." Word spread quickly. Human soldiers volunteered for controlled exposure experiments, letting themselves take non-lethal energy blasts under strict supervision. The results were undeniable. Repeated exposure hardened them, each soldier requiring more and more energy to be incapacitated. The coalition had been losing for decades. Now, for the first time, they had an answer, and the Dominion had no idea what was coming. The Dominion learned the truth too late. When human forces launched their first major counteroffensive, the enemy commanders expected another massacre. They had studied Earth's history, its wars. They knew humans were persistent, but persistence meant nothing against superior firepower. Then the first wave landed. The Dominion fired without hesitation. Plasma bolts lit up the battlefield, slamming into human soldiers with pinpoint accuracy. The first shot staggered them, but no one fell. The second volley hit harder, yet the humans kept moving. The third, nothing. The soldiers didn't even flinch. Their bodies had adapted beyond what even coalition scientists had predicted. Skin darkened slightly where plasma had struck repeatedly, almost like developing a callus. Internal organs showed reinforced cellular structures, dispersing energy before it could cause critical damage. Some soldiers, exposed to continuous fire, even exhibited accelerated reaction times, as if the energy itself fueled their movements. The battlefield became a horror show for the Dominion. Their greatest weapon, the force that had annihilated civilizations, was now useless. The Telnari officers scrambled for alternatives. Switch to kinetic rounds? Too late. Human armor absorbed impacts better than most alien species. Deploy melee units? Suicide. Humans thrived in close-quarters combat. Their only real option was retreat. But fear spreads faster than orders. Dominion foot soldiers, once proud warriors of an unstoppable empire, began breaking ranks. Rumors spread through their ranks like wildfire. The humans don't die. They drink plasma like water. They are death made flesh. The most seasoned troops hesitated before pulling the trigger, knowing it was useless. Some threw down their weapons and ran. Others surrendered outright. In one recorded encounter, a Telnari captain stood frozen as an entire squad of humans walked through a sustained barrage of high-yield plasma fire, emerging unscathed. The captain simply collapsed to his knees, weapon slipping from his hands. "What are you?" he whispered. Captain Rourke crouched beside him, gripping the alien's shoulder. The future, across the war front, the Dominion's forces crumbled. Coalition scientists continued refining the adaptation process, introducing controlled plasma exposure in training regiments. New recruits spent days under low-level energy barges, pre-adapting them before ever stepping onto the battlefield. The result was terrifying. Humans who had never seen combat could now withstand direct hits from weapons designed to annihilate armies. The Dominion's high command was in chaos. They had ruled with an iron fist for centuries, But now they face an enemy they couldn't kill. If energy weapons were useless, what remained? Chemical warfare? Too unpredictable. Kinetic strikes? Too slow. Their entire military doctrine had been built around one concept: energy-based supremacy. And now, that supremacy was gone. The order was given: deploy the superweapon. It was a last-ditch effort, a weapon so powerful it had never been used before. A planetary-scale energy bombardment capable of wiping out entire continents in seconds. If humanity could withstand plasma, then the Dominion would drown them in pure, unfiltered energy. The countdown began. The Dominion's ultimate gambit had begun, a weapon of unparalleled destructive force unleashed upon the human ranks. The massive surge of raw, unfiltered energy roared across the battlefield, an inferno meant to end the war in one decisive moment. As the searing plasma wave advanced, every human soldier braced for obliteration. But in that instant, something extraordinary occurred. Instead of disintegrating, the human form shimmered under the intense onslaught, absorbing the ferocious energy as if it were fuel. With each pulse of the devastating barrage, the human body transformed further. Scars that once spelled injury now glowed with a subtle, reinforcing light, and every cell reconfigured itself to repel the lethal heat. It was a metamorphosis born of necessity, a final, defiant evolution against annihilation. Amid the chaos, Captain Rourke led his comrades with unyielding resolve. His eyes, steeled by countless battles, surveyed the devastation and, instead of despair, recognized the spark of something unprecedented. His body, marked by the accumulated trials of combat, now pulsed with an almost otherworldly resilience. Every fiber of his being responded to the energy attack. Muscles tightened, nerves fired with heightened sensitivity, and reflexes sharpened as if honed by the very weapon designed to kill him. His voice cut through the tumult, clear and unwavering. A command to advance, to fight back against fate itself. The superweapon's energy, meant to be the final blow, instead became a catalyst for human empowerment. Soldiers, once vulnerable to the searing strikes, now moved with a preternatural agility, each step synchronized with the rhythm of the pulsing energy. Their bodies, acting as both shield and sword, defied the Dominion's carefully crafted calculations. As they advanced, every burst of plasma that should have spelled doom only fortified their defenses further, turning the tide of battle into an overwhelming surge of human tenacity and ingenuity. In that moment, the battlefield transformed into a living testament to human resilience, an arena where energy itself was repurposed into an instrument of survival and victory. The Dominion's ranks, unaccustomed to witnessing such an inexplicable phenomenon, began to fracture. Commanders, once confident in their arsenal of energy weapons, now found themselves paralyzed by disbelief. The enemy they had so meticulously studied had become something entirely unpredictable, a force that thrived on what was once its greatest strength. Panic rippled through the Dominion lines as soldiers, their morale shattered, abandoned their posts and fled into the void of space, leaving behind a once formidable military machine in disarray. In the wake of the superweapon's failure, a profound silence settled over the battlefield. The Dominion's ambition had backfired spectacularly, and in its place stood a human army reborn through fire. Their evolution was complete, a metamorphosis that transformed every individual into a living embodiment of adaptability and power. Victory was not merely achieved through superior technology or overwhelming force, but through the indomitable spirit of a species that had learned to harness the very energy that sought to destroy it. As the last echoes of the superweapon faded, humanity emerged not just as survivors, but as the architects of a new future, a future where the capacity to evolve was the ultimate weapon, and where every challenge was met with a resolve that could redefine the very fabric of existence.